Okay, welcome back. Now that you have made a button, we're going to talk about how to kind of organize your GUI and make it look visually appealing. So, real quick, last video we made this blue button, which was amazing. We also have this button called red button, and we have declared him, but we have not created him. So let's do that. I'm going to be really lazy, and I'm going to copy and paste. And I'm going to say this time I'm going to give birth to red button. He's still a J button, so I will instantiate him in the same way. I need somebody to listen to that button or he is useless. And I will say, let's put red button in the east. Now, there he is. Now, unfortunately, somebody's listening to him, but we don't do any action when he's crying to us, so he's kind of useless right now. But again, I just have to instantiate him. I need someone to listen to him, and then I'm going to put him on the screen so that I can see him. Now, let's go down here to this action performed. Now, just so you can believe me, somebody is listening to that button, right? So let me show you this. When an action is performed, we get some if statements here, but I'm going to put this right here, so it doesn't matter where the button or where the action came from. This code says just say hey. So just to prove it to you, when I press the red button, it does go down into that action performed, like it is listening to you, and it hops down to here. It says hey, but since the source was not the blue button and the source was not the go button, it doesn't do anything else. So let's make a decision. Let's say when I hear your action, if the source of that action was the red button, then I want the canvas to turn red. So now we've got both of these report their action to the GUI. The GUI makes a decision about who was reporting to him and then does the job. Now here's the weirdest thing. Now that we've got two buttons, that's amazing. If I wouldn't it be nice if they were both kind of up in the top? Wouldn't that be great? If I said put the blue button in the north, put the red button in the north, and they could both be up there and it would be beautiful. Unfortunately, that's not how things work. Because there can only be one person in the north, so the blue button had claimed the north, and then the red button marched in and stole it from him. So, if you're going to organize your GUI and you want people to share things, you're going to have to cheat a little bit. So the problem is you can only put one thing in the north. The north will not share. So here's what I'm going to do. This is kind of cheap. I'm going to not put these things on the GUI yet. So right now, if I run it, they are not there because I never set add them to the GUI. Now I can only put one thing in the north. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm only going to put one thing in the north. I'm going to put a JPanel up there. This JPanel I'm going to put in the north. So I'm going to make this thing, and I will put him in the north, kind of like I'd put the buttons in the north. Now, you won't really be able to notice it yet. It's not going to be very exciting. There it is, that little gray nothingness. So there's one thing in the north. What I'm going to do that's cheap is I'm going to tell that panel to put two things on it. So the big problem is the GUI will only let me put one thing in the north, and so I'll get away with that. I'll only put one thing in the north. I'm just going to put two things on that thing before I put it on there. So this panel is I'm going to glue these things to the panel before I glue the panel to the north. And once I've done that, gorgeous. Now, so again, kind of cheap. Really that big gray background, this thing here, is the panel. That's the thing I put in the north. I put two things on the thing that I put in the north. Now everybody's happy. One other thing, when you make this JPanel, now this is weird. When you're adding these things to the panel, you don't necessarily need to tell it north, south, or whatever. Just say glue these things onto the panel. You could also make the panel smarter and tell it how many rows and columns you want it to be laid out in. Now again, I'm still not telling these things where to go on the panel. They'll take care of it themselves based on how smart the panel is and how you told the panel to be laid out. So this says lay it out in one row and two columns. I could also say lay it out in 2 rows and 1 column. Amazing. Gorgeous. Now, let me show you a little something fancy. Down on the bottom of this in the south, I would like to put some things on there. So down here in the south, I've already gone ahead and created some JText fields. I made 3 JText fields and a button, and then I could say if I want those 4 things, the 3 JText fields and the button, to be in the south, I could make this bottom pane that has 1 row and 4 columns. Whoops. Let's try that again. 1 row and 4 columns, and I could put the 3 fields and the button onto that bottom pane before I put the bottom pane on the south. And so I've cheated again. I really only put 1 thing in the south, but I put a bunch of things on there before I put it in the south. Awesome. So you get all sorts of different options for creating and organizing things, and it's beautiful. Hold on real quick, and I'm going to show you one other thing that's called a JLabel. Okay, and you may also, when you're making a GUI, you've got buttons, which are things you press. You have JText fields, which are things that you could type into. And then you may want just some labels, and a label is something that is just there. I can't click it, I can't type on it, but it's text that labels things. You could make a JLabel. Typically, you don't need a variable for it because you don't ever really want to talk to it again. So I'm going to birth it right as I put it onto the panel. And so if you'll notice, I made this bottom panel have 2 rows and 4 columns. So it's got 2 rows and 4 columns. Very nice. And I just went ahead and put, now when you add things on there, it'll add it kind of like a typewriter. So it did the whole first row. I did 4 things for the first row and then 4 things for the bottom row. And you get something that looks beautiful like that. So JLabels, JText fields, JButtons. Now you are a GUI master. Come back for the next video and we'll talk about how to get user input from your GUI.